I regret marrying you. You'll never be good enough for someone like me. James delivered these words with the same smug superiority he used when critiquing my clothing choices or commenting on my modest career achievements. My name is Rachel, and at 34, I was standing in my kitchen listening to my husband of 6 years explain why I didn't measure up to his standards. The argument had started over something trivial. I'd bought the wrong brand of coffee, but had quickly evolved into his favorite topic, my inadequacies. I looked at him across our granite countertop, taking in his self-satisfied expression, his perfectly pressed shirt, his carefully styled hair. 6 years of marriage, and he still acted like he'd done me a favor by choosing me. "We'll see about that," I replied quietly, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside. The smile slipped from his face for just a moment. He'd expected tears, probably. Or perhaps begging, promises to do better, to be worthy of him. Instead, I picked up my car keys and headed for the door. "Where are you going?" he called after me, confusion evident in his voice. "Rachel, don't be dramatic. You know I'm just trying to help you improve." Improve? Like I was a project he'd taken on, a fixer-upper he'd grown tired of renovating. Every critical comment over the years flashed through my mind. My plain wardrobe, my unremarkable career trajectory, my average achievements. "Just going to the gym," I replied, which was true. But for the first time, I wasn't going because James had hinted my jeans were getting tight. I was going because I wanted to, needed to, do something for myself. In the car, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't call my friends to vent about my husband's cruelty. Instead, I made a mental list. A plan. James thought I'd never be good enough? Fine. Let's see what not good enough looked like when it walked away. At the gym, I signed up for personal training sessions, not to meet James's standards, but to feel strong, to remember what it felt like to set my own goals, to work towards something for myself rather than for his approval. My phone buzzed with a text from him. "Don't forget we have dinner with my colleagues next week. Wear something sophisticated this time." And I thought about all the dinners where he'd subtly corrected my table manners, explained my job in dismissive terms to his coworkers, introduced me like an accessory rather than a partner. Looking forward to it, I texted back. Let him think his words hadn't landed. Let him believe everything was normal. I had 4 weeks until that dinner, and he had no idea what was coming. The next morning, I made an appointment with a divorce lawyer before heading to work. James noticed nothing unusual about my early departure. He was too busy critiquing the breakfast I'd made. "The eggs are overdone again," he sighed, like my culinary skills were a personal affront. "I don't understand why you can't master something so simple." "You're right," I replied mildly. "I guess I'll never be as perfect as your mother." He missed my sarcasm, launching into another story about his mother's legendary breakfast-making abilities. I let him talk while I mentally reviewed my checklist. Lawyer, bank accounts, apartment hunting, each item a step toward freedom. At work, I threw myself into a major marketing campaign I'd been hesitant to lead. James had always implied I wasn't ready for bigger responsibilities, that I should be content with my current position. "Not everyone can be ambitious," he'd say, as if ambition was a quality reserved for people like him. My boss noticed the change immediately. "This is excellent work, Rachel," she said, reviewing my proposal. "I've been waiting for you to step up like this. In fact, there's an opening for senior marketing director I think you should consider." A month ago, I would have demurred, heard James's voice in my head listing all the reasons I wasn't qualified. Instead, I smiled and said, "I'd love to apply." That evening, while James worked late, I went through our wedding photos. I barely recognized myself, not because I looked so different, but because I remembered how I'd felt that day. Confident, worthy, loved. When had I started believing his subtle digs? His constant implications that I was somehow lacking? My phone buzzed with a text from my college roommate, Sarah. We'd lost touch over the years. James had never liked her aggressive personality. Haven't heard from you in forever. Drinks soon? I thought about all the friendships I'd let fade because James found my friends too loud, too ambitious, too independent. How he'd slowly isolated me until his opinion was the only one that mattered. Love to, I texted back. Tomorrow work? That night, James came home late, reeking of expensive scotch. Had dinner with the partners, he announced, loosening his tie. You should have seen their wives. So elegant, so polished. Why can't you put in that kind of effort? I looked at my husband, really looked at him, and saw not the impressive man he pretended to be, but someone small. Someone who could only feel big by making others feel small. Maybe you're right, I said softly. Maybe I'll never be that kind of wife. He smiled, satisfied that I was finally accepting my limitations. He had no idea I was already planning my escape. The next few weeks passed in a carefully orchestrated dance. While James continued his usual commentary on my shortcomings, I quietly set my plan in motion. I opened a separate bank account and started transferring my own salary into it. The lawyer had confirmed what I suspected. The money I'd earned was mine, despite James's constant implications that everything we had was thanks to him. Sarah helped me find a beautiful apartment across town. Modern, bright, everything James would hate. Too feminine, he would have said, as if that were an insult. I signed the lease using only my name, something I hadn't done since before our marriage. At work, I threw myself into the senior director application. My presentation to the board was scheduled for the same day as James's dinner with his colleagues, the dinner where he expected me to play the role of perfect, submissive wife one last time. Don't forget about Thursday, he reminded me over breakfast. The partners' wives will all be there. Try to do something about your hair before then. And please wear the blue dress I bought you. At least that's appropriate. The blue dress he'd bought to fix my wardrobe, claiming my own choices were too colorful, too bold, too much like me instead of what a partner at his law firm's wife should be. Of course, I said, buttering my toast. I want everything to be perfect. He smiled, pleased with my apparent submission. Finally learning, aren't you? Maybe there's hope for you yet. I thought about the red dress hanging in my new apartment, the one I'd bought for my board presentation, the one that screamed confidence, ambition, everything James had tried to dim in me. My phone buzzed with a message from my lawyer. Papers ready when you are. Another from Sarah. Apartment all set up. You're going to love the view. And one from my boss. Board's excited about your presentation Thursday. You've got this. James noticed my small smile. Good news? Just work stuff, I replied. Nothing important. He launched into his usual speech about how I should be content with my comfortable position, how not everyone was meant for leadership roles. I let his words wash over me, no longer feeling their sting. That evening, I packed a small bag while he was in the shower, just enough to get through the next few days. The rest of my things were already in my new apartment, moved piece by piece over the past weeks. Going to the gym again? He called out as I headed for the door. You're certainly dedicated lately, though maybe focus more on cardio than weights. You don't want to look too muscular. Just trying to improve, I called back, using his favorite word. Isn't that what you've always wanted? Thursday arrived with perfect timing. My board presentation was scheduled for 2 p.m., giving me plenty of time before James's dinner at 7. He'd left early that morning, reminding me one last time about wearing the blue dress, about fixing my hair, about trying to be presentable for once. I stood in front of the board in my red dress, my carefully prepared presentation representing not just a potential promotion, but a declaration of independence. 6 years of James telling me I wasn't leadership material dissolved as I confidently walked them through my vision for the company's future. Outstanding presentation, Rachel, the CEO said afterward. The position is yours if you want it, though I have to ask, why now? You've always been capable of this. I thought about James's voice in my head, all the times I'd held back because he'd convinced me I wasn't ready, wasn't good enough, wasn't meant for more. Let's just say I finally realized my worth, I replied. By 6:30, I was walking into the upscale restaurant where James's dinner was being held. Not in the modest blue dress he'd chosen, but in my red one, fresh from celebrating my promotion with Sarah. His eyes widened when he saw me, a mix of confusion and anger crossing his face. "What are you wearing?" he hissed as I approached. "I told you." "James," one of the partners cut him off. "Is this your wife? Rachel, we've heard so much about you." I smiled, noting how James tensed. What exactly had he told them about me? "All good things, I hope," I said, sliding gracefully into my seat. "James mentioned you work in marketing?" another partner's wife asked. Before James could minimize my career as he usually did, I smiled. "Yes, actually, I just accepted a position as senior marketing director at Maxwell & Brooks today." The table erupted in congratulations. Maxwell & Brooks was one of the city's most prestigious firms, and, I knew, one of James's firm's biggest clients. His face had gone pale. "Senior director?" one of the partners said, impressed. "James, you never mentioned your wife was so accomplished." "It's recent," James managed, trying to regain control, though I've always encouraged Rachel's modest ambitions. "Modest?" the partner laughed. "Maxwell & Brooks has been trying to poach talent from our marketing department for years. They only take the best." I watched James struggle to maintain his composure as his carefully constructed narrative about his underwhelming wife crumbled. Every compliment from his colleagues, every impressed glance, every conversation that revealed my competence, they all chipped away at his facade. "We should celebrate," he said finally, trying to take credit as he always did. "I knew you had it in you, with my support." "Actually," I cut him off softly, "we need to talk after dinner." The dinner felt endless, each minute ticking by as James alternated between trying to reclaim control and watching his carefully crafted image unravel. Every time he attempted to diminish my achievements, someone at the table inadvertently contradicted him. "James always says you're still finding your way professionally," one partner's wife said kindly. "Actually," another partner interrupted, "Maxwell & Brooks just poached our entire marketing team last month. They must see something special in Rachel to offer her a director position." I watched James's jaw clench, saw the subtle tremor in his hand as he reached for his wineglass. 6 years of him telling everyone, including me, that I was somehow less than, and it was all falling apart in a single evening. "Excuse us for a moment," he said finally, grabbing my elbow as we stepped away from the table. "What do you think you're doing?" "Having dinner," I replied calmly. "Isn't that what you wanted?" "That dress, this attitude? You're embarrassing me." I looked at his fingers digging into my arm, then back at his face. "No, James. You've been embarrassing yourself for years. I just finally stopped helping you do it." His face reddened. "We'll discuss this at home." "There's nothing to discuss. The papers are on your desk. I moved out last week." The color drained from his face. "You what?" "Yep, you said I'd never be good enough for someone like you," I reminded him softly. "Turns out you're right. I'm actually better." "You can't leave me," he hissed. "You're nothing without me. Who do you think made you what you are?" I smiled, genuinely smiled for the first time in years. "That's exactly the problem, James. You really believe that. Just like you believe those partners respect you, when really they're just tolerating you. Just like you believe putting others down makes you bigger." "You're being hysterical." "No, I'm being honest. Maybe for the first time since we met." I glanced back at the table, where his colleagues were pretending not to watch us. "Should we share more honesty with them? About who you really are?" He stepped back, his facade cracking completely. "Rachel, wait." I did wait. For 6 years, I waited for you to see me as an equal, to value me, to love me instead of trying to diminish me. I'm done waiting. "Let's go home," he pleaded, his voice losing its usual arrogance. "We can talk about this. I'll do better. I'll get counseling." "The time for that was 6 years ago," I replied. Or 3 years ago when I begged you to try therapy with me. Or even last month before you told me I'd never be good enough. His eyes darted around the restaurant, aware of the attention we were drawing. James hated scenes, unless he was the one creating them to put me down. You're upset, I understand. The promotion's gone to your head, but this isn't you, Rachel. The dress, the attitude, this isn't the woman I married. You're right, because the woman you married still believed she needed your approval to exist. She believed your lies about her worth. She thought your criticism was love. One of the partners approached us. Everything all right here? Fine, James said quickly. Just a small disagreement. Actually, I cut in, I was just leaving. Busy day tomorrow at my new job. I turned to James. The divorce papers are on your desk. Your lawyer has a copy too. Don't worry, I'm not asking for anything. You can keep all the furniture you picked out, all the clothes you chose for me, all the pieces of the life you tried to force me into. His face contorted with panic. Divorce? Rachel, you can't be serious. You'll never be good enough for someone like me, I quoted his words back to him. Those weren't just words, James. They were permission. Permission to finally believe I deserve better. The partner was still standing there, witnessing James's carefully constructed world crumble. Other diners had stopped pretending not to watch. Rachel, please. James tried one last time. I love you. No, you loved owning me, controlling me, making me small enough to fit in your pocket. But I'm done being small. I turned to the partner. I'm sorry to cut the evening short. Thank you for your hospitality. Then to James. Don't try to contact me. All communication goes through the lawyers from now on. As I walked away, I heard the partner ask, Everything okay, James? Fine, James replied automatically. Rachel's just being dramatic. Really? The partner's voice carried. Because from where I stood, she sounded perfectly reasonable. Maybe we should discuss your position at the firm tomorrow. I smiled as I stepped into the warm evening air. My new apartment was waiting. Bright, open, filled with colors James would hate. My new job started Monday. My new life was already beginning. The fallout from that dinner rippled through our social circles like a tidal wave. James tried to control the narrative, claiming I was having a midlife crisis, that the promotion had changed me, that I'd become unstable. But his carefully crafted image had cracked too publicly for anyone to fully believe him. His colleagues had seen too much that night. The way he'd tried to grab my arm, the desperation in his voice, the mask slipping to reveal the insecure man beneath. The partners' wives, whom he'd always used as examples of proper behavior, now shared stories of his condescending comments over the years. He always made little digs about Rachel, one confided to mutual friends. We thought she was quiet and insecure, but now we realize he'd been systematically undermining her for years. At work, my new position came with an office overlooking the city. I filled it with everything James had deemed inappropriate: bright artwork, comfortable furniture, family photos that showed me smiling with friends he'd disapproved of. Every day, I felt more like myself and less like the shadow I'd become in our marriage. Sarah helped me rediscover old passions: photography, hiking, taking cooking classes for fun rather than to meet James's standards. I forgot how much you used to laugh, she said during one of our weekend adventures. The divorce proceedings moved quickly thanks to my preparation. James alternated between threats and pleading, sending lengthy emails about how I was ruining both our lives. Each one revealed more of his true nature: the control he'd masked as concern, the criticism he'd disguised as care. You're making a fool of yourself, he wrote. Everyone sees how you've changed, how you're not the sweet, modest woman I married. I forwarded each message to my lawyer without responding. Let him show the world exactly who he was. His mother called, trying to mediate. James tells me you've become quite difficult, she said, her tone matching the one he'd always used. He's just trying to help you be your best self. No, I replied. He was trying to make me into someone small enough to make him feel big. I'm done being small. The news of my promotion spread through our social circle. along with stories of the dinner where I'd finally stood up for myself. Women I'd known for years started reaching out, sharing their own stories of controlling partners, of rediscovering themselves, of choosing their own worth over someone else's approval. My new apartment became a sanctuary of self-discovery. I painted the walls colors James would have hated, bought furniture for comfort rather than appearance, and started hosting dinner parties where laughter mattered more than proper etiquette. One evening, as I was leaving work, I ran into one of the partners from that fateful dinner. "James is on probation at the firm," he told me. That night opened our eyes to some concerning patterns in his behavior. Several junior associates have since come forward with complaints about his management style. I wasn't surprised. James's need to feel superior hadn't been limited to our marriage. "You know," the partner added, "we do a lot of business with Maxwell and Brooks. Looking forward to working with you in a professional capacity." 3 months into my new life, James made one final attempt to regain control. He showed up at my office unannounced, wearing the contrite expression he'd always used after his cruelest moments. "You've made your point," he said, standing in my doorway. "You've shown everyone you can succeed without me. Now let's stop this nonsense and come home." I looked at him from behind my desk, taking in how small he seemed now. His perfectly pressed suit couldn't hide his desperation. His practiced smile couldn't mask his fear of losing his favorite target. "This isn't about making a point," I replied. "This is about finally living my life without your constant criticism, your subtle digs, your need to make me feel lesser." "I was trying to help you improve." "No, you were trying to break me down to build yourself up. There's a difference." He stepped into my office uninvited, his eyes taking in the decor he would have once criticized. The awards I'd won since starting my new position. The photos of me with friends, smiling, living. "You've changed," he accused. "No, I've remembered who I was before you convinced me I needed to change." My assistant appeared in the doorway. "Everything okay, Rachel? Security is on standby." James flushed at the implication that he might need to be removed. "I'm your husband." "Ex-husband," I corrected. "The divorce was finalized last week. You signed the papers, remember?" His face darkened. "You're making a mistake. You'll never find anyone else at your age. You'll end up alone." "I'd rather be alone than spend another minute letting you convince me I'm not enough." I stood up, my heels putting me at eye level with him. "Now you can leave on your own, or security can help you out. Your choice." He left, but not before one last attempt. "Your success won't last without me to guide you." My success started the moment I stopped letting you guide me. Goodbye, James. Later that evening, at a dinner with Sarah and other friends, I shared the encounter. Instead of sympathy, I received congratulations. "To Rachel," Sarah toasted, "who proved that the best revenge is living well and letting them watch." The women around the table, successful, vibrant, real, clinked glasses. Some shared their own stories of breaking free from controlling partners, of rediscovering their worth, of choosing themselves. James's words about ending up alone echoed hollowly against the sound of laughter and friendship filling the restaurant. This was what he'd tried to keep me from. Genuine connections, real joy, a life lived on my own terms. My phone buzzed with a message from my boss. Another successful campaign, another reason to celebrate. In the 6 months since I'd left James, my career had soared. Turns out confidence blooms quickly once you stop letting someone trim its edges. "You're glowing," one friend observed. "Freedom looks good on you." A year after that dinner where I'd finally stood up to James, I attended the same firm's annual gala, this time as a valued business partner rather than someone's quiet wife. I wore red again, a different dress but the same confidence that had started my journey to freedom. James wasn't there. He'd taken a position at a smaller firm after his probation led to a mutual separation from his old company. Through the grapevine, I heard he'd tried dating younger women, promising to help them reach their potential, his old patterns seeking new targets. The partners' wives who'd once been held up as examples of proper behavior had become friends and allies. "We should have said something sooner," one told me during the gala. "We saw what he was doing to you, how he'd dim your light every time you started to shine." My success had only grown over the year. The marketing campaigns I led had brought in record profits, earning me a seat on the executive board. Each achievement felt sweeter for being truly mine, not something I had to diminish to protect someone else's ego. Sarah nudged me during dinner, pointing out how many people were drawn to my table, to my conversation, to my genuine laugh. "Remember when James used to tell you to be quieter, to take up less space?" I did remember. I remembered every time he'd told me to be less ambitious, less outgoing, less me. Now being more had become my revolution. The last time I heard about James was through a LinkedIn update. He'd posted a long message about personal growth and learning from past mistakes. The comments were filled with professional platitudes, but those who knew him saw it for what it was: another attempt to rewrite his story, to cast himself as the hero of his own redemption. My own story had evolved beyond him. The quiet wife he'd tried to contain had become someone who mentored other women, who spoke at conferences, who lived life in full color rather than the muted tones he'd prescribed. At a leadership summit where I was speaking, a young woman approached me afterward. "My boyfriend keeps telling me I'm too ambitious, that I need to tone myself down to make him comfortable, that he's just trying to help me be better." I recognized James's words coming from another man's mouth, the same pattern of control dressed up as care. "Someone who truly wants to help you be better," I told her, "will never start by telling you you're not enough." Later that night, looking out over the city from my apartment, my space, my life, my choices, I thought about James's last words to me. "You'll never be good enough." He'd meant them as a prison sentence, but they'd become my liberation. Because he was right in a way. I would never be good enough for someone who needed me to be less than I am. And finally, that was more than enough for me.